Hello everyone, it's Scottomato back for another Botania setup video. In this episode we're going to play with fire. We're going to use the Thermalily, which is one of the most potent and popular of the Botania flowers because it produces tons of mana and we get to play with lava. Now according to the manual here, it is the hardest flower in the game. Now, I'm not sure if they mean that it's hard to automate or it's just a mean old flower. So I don't know what Vasky means there, but it's not that hard to automate. Let's take a look at our setup here. So I'm going to show you the internals first. You'll notice I don't have any of the Thermalilies laid down yet, and there's a good reason for that. So let's first just take a look at how we're going to place the lava, how we're going to handle the lava. And that's going to be the fluid placer from Actually Additions, which will just place the lava in the block above, and it's being blocked off now. This guy's a little bit hard to automate in some ways because the lava wants to flow around it. So it's easier just to leave it running and block it off with a piston. And I'll go into that in more detail. But I have the lava coming in from an ender tank from the nether, and we'll go and look at the nether setup here in a moment. But I also have the fluid laser relays from Actually Additions that are working as pipes, essentially, wireless, well, yeah, I guess they're wireless lasers that are sending the fluid. So I have one on the bottom of the placer here and one on the bottom of the tank. One on the placer you can leave as is. The one on the tank, you're going to want to change the mode to be sure that it's in only out of adjacent blocks. And so you use a compass to change that, only into adjacent blocks, only out of adjacent blocks. That's what you want to change it to. So that's going to be how the lava goes from the tank into the placer. Now, as I mentioned, I have a sticky piston here that's blocking it off for now. But let's go over to the nether and look at the setup of how we're getting the lava. Okay, so quickly let me turn down the sounds on the block so we don't have to hear the nether portal. All right, so I just have a little platform here made in the lava lake, a little enclosure. And I am using the pump from Ranged Pumps. And it'll take this lava lake and drain it dry over time. It has a radius of 64 blocks, and it'll just pull in lava and replace it with smooth stone. So you probably have essentially limitless lava because it's not likely that you're going to play long enough to drain this whole lake. At the same token, it does require some power, a little bit of RF power. So I have the heat collector from Actually Additions and then the energy laser relays going between them that's transferring the power. So this gets RF power just by being surrounded by heat sources. Now, one thing I do want to mention is that it does consume the lava source, but also the ranged pump can take that lava source away. There's not really much you can do about that. You could just replace your lava source. So you're going to be surrounded on all sides, essentially all four sides. And so you could just fill in your lava if you ever find that you have a power problem. Otherwise, I just have a chunk loader to be sure that this chunk is full. And then this is the ender tank that is transferring it over to the overworld, much like an ender chest would do, and it is from the ender storage mod. So that's essentially the setup here in the nether. You would have wanted to bridge out here or fly out here, or whatever that may be. But that's how we're getting the lava, and it's essentially a limitless supply. So let's go on back to the overworld. And I do need to teleport back to my main portal because obviously I didn't spawn into that area. All right, so let's look at our setup here. This is similar to a lot of the other setups that I've done in the sense that I have a mana spreader. With the thermalilies, and we'll talk about that in more detail, you don't really need a more powerful mana spreader. In fact, you're kind of trying to slow them down a little bit, make them a little bit lazy, and you'll still get tons and tons of mana, so no problems there. But I have a comparator with a 2 blocks coming out on a lever, which is giving it a level of 14 before it triggers. So that means when this pool is 90% full, then this will trigger and turn off the circuit. Basically, in this case, it's triggering the sticky piston to block the lava with this glass. So that's how we're going to turn it off. Now we're going to be doing something a little bit different this time, and I want to thank the White Wolves for pointing this out to me, because I had done it with regular flowers, but you can improve this substantially by using floating flowers. So we're going to be using floating thermalilies. Now, how you make the floating flowers is you take any one of the regular Botania, mystical red flower, in this case, any one of the colors is fine, and you add 2 glowstone dust to make a glimmering flower, a glimmering version of the regular flower. Then you take that flower, the glimmering flower, with a pasture seed, which the pasture seed, you take grass and drop it, so you'll need shears, and drop it into the mana pool, and you'll get a pasture seed. So you take your glimmering flower, a pasture seed, and 1 piece of dirt. You'll get a floating version of that regular Botania flower, the red flower. Then you take that guy and you mix it with the flower that you want to float, the generating flower that you want to float. I guess it could be functional as well, functional flower. So you have the floating red flower in this case and the thermalily, and then that gives you the floating thermalily. All right, so it's not like it's expensive. There's a few steps that you'll want to go through. We've already obviously gone to the nether, so glowstone dust is no big deal. But this setup is improved with the floating flowers. So let me go ahead and cover this up, because I don't want the lava to flow in places that I don't intend it to. So I'm just going to go ahead and cover up all these blocks before we get started. All right, so the thermalily, it's a powerful flower. And what we want to do, it's interesting for it in automation because it has a 5-minute cooldown. All right, it will absorb a source block of lava, but it won't absorb any more for 5 minutes. Or if it does absorb more lava, then it will reset its timer, and that 5 minutes will start again. So we want to work with that to our advantage. We want to figure out a way that our automation can overcome the cooldown period. So how we're going to do that is we are going to place the flower and then listen to the mana pool. All right, listen to it filling the mana pool. And according to the manual, that takes around 45 seconds or so. And when we hear that mana is no longer being produced, then we'll lay down the next flower. So let me demonstrate how that works. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and disengage this off switch, which will give us the lava. So this is a master switch. And so now we have our lava here. So let's place our first thermalily. Here we go, the floating one. Okay, and so mana will start to flow. I do need to actually put my sounds back up so I can hear it, and hopefully you can hear it. But you want to listen to the mana as it goes into the pool, and you want to be ready with your next thermalily to place it is within a couple seconds or so after that stops. And the reason we're doing that is because it can sequence them together now. So this flower would trigger, then the next flower. So it gives us some control over that, and I'll demonstrate that in more detail as we go ahead and go into our setup here. So let's just wait now for this cooldown period to happen, and then we'll place the next flower. All right, whoops, there we go. So it just needs to be within a couple seconds or so. And the reason that we're doing that is, let's say that that does have the 45-second timeout. So we're going to do a total of 7 flowers set around this. And so 2 of them would be 90 seconds, and 4 of them would be 180 seconds, and 6 of them would be 270 seconds, and 7 of them with 45 seconds added would be 315 seconds. So that gets us close to the 5-minute cooldown period. So by the time it's sequenced all the way around here, we'll be ready to start the next one. And so that's a good system to use. But you do have to observe the fact that when this goes out, place the next one. So it's, you have to observe that you need to place them in a certain manner, in a certain direction to get the best use from them. So I'm not going to place all of them on camera. I'll go ahead and let this one finish, and then I'll place the remaining ones off camera, and then we'll come back and look at the result. So let's just let this one finish, and I'll place it, and then we'll go from there. Should just be a few seconds. And again, we are sequencing them now, so we know that this one will fire, then this one, then this one. And by the way, you can see which one's active by the particle effect on it. So this has a red particle effect. All right, we're placing that one. And now this one has the red particle effect. So you can tell which one's active by that. So anyway, let me go ahead and place the other ones, and I will be right back with you. All right, guys, so I'm getting ready to place the last flower here just in a few seconds, and then we can observe how that works as well. It'll go ahead and go through the 45 seconds. There we go. So it'll do its 45-second mana dump there, and then there'll be a pause in between these that we can hear. Now keep in mind that we are just using one single lava source block here, and so each one of these is consuming that just one right after the other. So that's a very efficient way of doing it. Now the reason the floating flowers are so important is so that this lava source block cannot flow to destroy the flowers. There is a circumstance in which the block placer here, the fluid placer, if it gets redstone power, okay, we're going to wait for our pause here. And I'm counting 10, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. Okay, so it's about 20 seconds in between those. So you'll have a pause of about 20 seconds, which can be useful because now you can hear the sequence. So you'll know that if you hear this longer pause here in the mana burst, then you have started here on the next one. But you can also tell from the particle effects, by the way, of which one is active, but that's still very useful for them to sequence to each other. Now the question was asked whether that if I turn this off, if it resets the timer on the flowers. I don't think so, because if you pick up these flowers in survival, then they will keep their timing. You can't cheat the cooldown. Now notice that the time in between this one to this one was just the time that it took us to place the next flower. So a couple seconds. So that's why that you wait for each one to place the next flower, because when it finishes one, then it'll just go immediately to the next one, but for the last one where you'll hear the longer pause. So that's useful in itself. But we do know that only one flower is being active at a time, and the others are in their cooldown phase. So there's some advantage to that in than just putting them down haphazardly. Okay, so boom, goes to the next one. So now we know it's on our third one here. Let me check the level of the mana pool. Okay, we got a little bit of ways to go. I'm actually going to go ahead and let that run for a little bit, and then we'll come right back as soon as the mana pool is ready to be filled. All right, guys, I'm back. So We are on this Thermalily here, and we just moved to the next one. Again, the duration is how long it took us to place one to the other. Couple things I want to mention. I've chosen a particular set of mods, but any mod that'll give you a repeating lava source here will work. So if you're in Skyblock, for instance, I do want to interrupt myself because it now triggered here. So at 90%, this comparator triggered the circuit, but notice that the Thermalily is still dumping until it's finished with its buffer because the pool triggers at 90%. So this puts the block over the top of the placer there and blocks the lava from coming through. So this circuit is essentially disabled now. If you wanted to empty some mana, you could use this master switch here and disable the whole circuit as well that way. Now, I was saying that you can use whatever produces a lava source block. If you were in Skyblock, you could use ex nihilo to create lava that way. You'd still need some kind of placer, but any source of lava and any source of placer would work with this setup. The principles still apply of how to best work with the cooldown. So anyway, that's the setup. The floating flowers are preferred, and I do want to thank the White Wolves again and give a shout out for doing that because that was a definite improvement. And I hope the crafting recipe and that was clear because that's a big question that people are always asking, how to create floating flowers. So there we go. That's the Thermalily. You can see it from the top. It's a pretty simple setup here, but these guys really, really are hard workers in producing mana for you if you can give them the lava that they love. So anyway, this is Scott O'Mato. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, then please leave a like. Or if you didn't like this video, then please tell me why and how I can improve. Thank you so much for watching. Have a great day. Bye-bye.